Nora was a young nurse who had recently moved to a small lakeside village called Willow Shores. She needed a break from the constant noise of the city hospital, and this quiet town seemed like the perfect escape. Every evening, she would stroll down to Moonlight Lake, a calm stretch of blue water that shimmered under the setting sun. One warm evening, after finishing her shift at the local clinic, Nora walked toward the lake with a small lantern. The villagers often spoke of strange things happening there, but Nora was practical. She believed in science, not fairy tales. As she reached the edge of the water, she heard something, like a soft cry. At first, she thought it might be an animal. But as she moved closer, her eyes widened. There, tangled in a net near the reeds, was a mermaid. Her long silver hair floated on the water's surface, her tail gleamed with iridescent scales, and her hands clutched the net desperately. Even more shocking, her belly was swollen, clearly showing she was pregnant. Nora's first instinct was fear. A mermaid? That's impossible. But the nurse in her quickly took over. Someone, something, was in danger, and she had the skills to help. "Hold on, I'm coming," Nora whispered. She waded into the cool lake, pulling the net apart carefully. The mermaid winced, her pale face filled with exhaustion. Finally, with one strong tug, Nora freed her. The mermaid gasped, taking in air as her gills fluttered. She looked at Nora with tearful eyes. Thank you," the mermaid said softly, her voice melodic like a song carried on the wind. Nora froze. The mermaid spoke human words. "You're hurt," Nora said firmly, her training kicking in. She guided the mermaid closer to shore, examining the cuts on her tail from the rough net. "I can treat this. You'll be okay." The mermaid's eyes shimmered with gratitude. "My name is Serenia. I owe you my life and my child's." Nora didn't know what to say. She had never seen anything so impossible, so magical. Yet here she was, bandaging the wounds of a creature out of legend. Before Serenia slipped back into the lake, she whispered something strange. 8 days from now you will understand why fate brought us together." Nora stood there long after the mermaid disappeared beneath the surface. She didn't know whether to dismiss it as shock or believe that her life had just changed forever. But deep down, she sensed that this was only the beginning. The next morning, Nora woke to whispers drifting through Willow Shores. At the bakery, the townsfolk were buzzing about strange singing heard from the lake the previous night. Over the next few days, life in Willow Shores seemed normal, but Nora couldn't shake the unease. At the clinic, she noticed a new patient, a tall, sharp-eyed stranger who claimed to be a fisherman. His hands were rough, but his gaze lingered on her too long. "Busy place," he remarked casually. "Strange things in these waters, I hear." Nora forced a smile. Just fishermen's tales. But when he left, she felt a chill. His boots were wet, as if he had just come from the lake. That night, Nora returned to Moonlight Lake. Serenia appeared, but this time, her face was pale. "They know," Serenia whispered. "Hunters. They seek my kind, for power, for wealth. And they will not stop." Nora clenched her fists. "Then we'll stop them." "You don't understand," Serenia said. "They are dangerous. And when my child is born, its song could either heal or destroy. That is why they want it." Nora's mind raced. A child with such power? Hunters closing in? This was beyond anything she had imagined. Yet somehow she was already part of it. "Tell me what I must do," Nora said firmly. Serenia's eyes softened. "Be at the lake on the 8th night. Bring courage. Bring trust. For when the time comes, only you can protect my child." Suddenly, a branch snapped in the distance. Nora spun around, lantern raised, but saw nothing. Still she knew. The hunters were already here. The days crawled by, each filled with tension. Nora barely slept. The stranger appeared again in town, asking questions about the lake. Villagers shrugged, but Nora knew his interest wasn't harmless. Finally, the 8th night arrived. Nora stood at the lake's edge, heart pounding. The air was thick with mist, and the water glowed faintly. Serenia rose from the depths, her face contorted in pain. "It is time," she gasped. Nora rushed forward, instincts taking over. She had delivered babies before, but never like this. The lake churned around them as Serenia clutched Nora's hands. "You must help me quickly," Serenia cried. But before Nora could act, shadows emerged from the trees. The hunters. Nets and harpoons gleamed in the moonlight. At their front stood the stranger from the clinic. "There it is," he snarled. "The mermaid and her spawn." Nora's blood turned cold. They were surrounded. She spread her arms, shielding Serenia. "You'll have to go through me." The stranger sneered. "That can be arranged." The hunters advanced. Serenia screamed as the first contraction hit. The lake roared with her pain, waves crashing against the shore. In that moment, Nora realized the truth. Serenia's child was more than just a baby. Its birth would awaken the lake's ancient power. And if it fell into the wrong hands, everyone in Willow Shores would suffer. Nora had one choice: fight. Chaos erupted. The hunters lunged, nets flying. Nora grabbed a fallen branch and swung hard, knocking one man into the water. Serenia cried out, clutching her belly. "Protect the child," she screamed. The lake seemed to hear her. Waves surged, knocking hunters off their feet. Moonlight lit the surface like silver fire. The stranger pushed forward, harpoon raised. "That child belongs to us." "No," Nora said fiercely, standing her ground. "That child belongs to the lake, and to its mother." At that moment, Serenia gave one final cry. A burst of light exploded from the water as her child was born. The baby's wail was not ordinary. It was a song, pure and powerful, echoing through the night. The hunters staggered, clutching their ears as the lake rose up like a living thing, dragging them beneath the waves. The stranger screamed, but the water swallowed him whole. And then silence. Nora knelt beside Serenia, cradling the tiny mare-child with shimmering scales and bright, curious eyes. The infant cooed, and the lake calmed. "You saved us," Serenia whispered weakly. "Without you, my child would be lost." Nora smiled, tears in her eyes. "No, you both saved me. You reminded me what it means to truly heal." Serenia placed a hand over Nora's heart. "You are now part of the lake's story. Forever." With that, she slipped back into the glowing water, her newborn safe in her arms. Nora stood at the shore, shaken but alive. The night was quiet again. Yet she knew she would never be the same. 8 days ago, she thought she was just a nurse in a small village. Now, she was the guardian of a secret more powerful than she could ever imagine. And Moonlight Lake would never forget her name.